Jack had always been the type of man who believed in building his own destiny. From humble beginnings, he had worked tirelessly to climb the corporate ladder, eventually founding his own company that quickly grew into a thriving business empire. Jack was known not just for his sharp business acumen but also for his generosity and loyalty, traits that won him the respect of everyone who knew him. He was living what many would call the perfect life. Jack's wife, Sarah, was stunningly beautiful, the kind of woman who could light up any room she walked into. She was intelligent, charming, and always the life of the party. To Jack, she was his rock, his greatest supporter and the love of his life. They had been married for 10 years, and in his eyes, their relationship was built on mutual respect, love, and unwavering trust. And then there was Tom, Jack's best friend since college and his business partner. Tom was charismatic, ambitious, and shared Jack's vision for their company. They had built their business together from the ground up, facing challenges side by side and celebrating every victory. To Jack, Tom was like a brother. They were inseparable, their bond forged through years of hard work and shared dreams. Life was good. Jack had it all, a successful company, a loving wife, and a best friend who was more like family. He often found himself thinking about how lucky he was to be surrounded by people he trusted completely. Every morning, he woke up feeling grateful, certain that his life was exactly as it should be. But lately, something felt off. Sarah had become distant, often lost in her thoughts, her laughter less frequent and her smiles slightly strained. She spent more time on her phone, always quick to lock the screen whenever Jack walked by. She brushed it off as stress, blaming work and the responsibilities of running their household. Jack, ever the devoted husband, dismissed his concerns, not wanting to believe there could be anything wrong. Tom, too, had started acting differently. He was more secretive than usual, taking private calls and disappearing during meetings. Jack noticed Tom's evasive answers when asked about his whereabouts, but he didn't think much of it. They were business partners, and Jack trusted Tom implicitly. If Tom needed space, Jack was willing to give it. In quiet moments, though, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with unspoken worries. He chalked it up to the pressures of running a business and maintaining a marriage. Little did Jack know, the perfect life he thought he was living was about to unravel in the most unexpected way. It was a late Tuesday evening when Jack's world started to crack. He had come home early, hoping to surprise Sarah with dinner, something they hadn't done in months. As he walked through the front door, the house was quiet, almost eerily so. Jack noticed Sarah's laptop open on the kitchen counter, the screen still glowing. She was usually careful with her personal things, but tonight, she seemed to have forgotten. Curious, Jack glanced at the screen. What he saw stopped him cold, a long string of emails between Sarah and Tom. At first, they seemed harmless, businesslike even, but as Jack scrolled further, the tone changed. They became flirtatious, then explicit, and finally unmistakably clear in their intention. The latest email was titled "Last Night Was Amazing," and as Jack read the contents, his heart sank. The woman he loved and the man he trusted most had been betraying him behind his back. Jack's hands shook as he shut the laptop, his mind racing. He sat there in silence, feeling the crushing weight of anger and disbelief. But instead of confronting Sarah immediately, he decided to keep his emotions in check. Jack was a man who believed in controlling the narrative, and if he was going to deal with this betrayal, he needed to do it on his terms. Over the next few days, Jack started to piece together the full extent of Sarah and Tom's affair. He found more damning evidence, suspicious text messages, hidden photos, and most shockingly, a burner phone tucked away in Sarah's closet. It was filled with explicit messages and images, proof of their secret meetings, late-night rendezvous, and whispered promises that made Jack's blood boil. The betrayal was deeper than he had imagined. It wasn't just physical, it was personal, emotional, and worst of all, calculated. Jack felt torn between rage and heartbreak. Part of him wanted to confront them immediately, to scream, to demand answers. But the other part of him, the calculated businessman, knew that a hasty reaction would only give them power over him. Instead, he channeled his anger into a plan. He began collecting every piece of evidence he could find, meticulously documenting each indiscretion. He installed hidden cameras, recorded phone calls, and took screenshots of their conversations. Jack was building an airtight case, not just for his heart, but for the battle ahead. The deeper Jack dug, the more he realized that Tom's betrayal went beyond the affair. Financial records showed that Tom had been making reckless business decisions behind Jack's back, siphoning company funds to finance his lavish lifestyle with Sarah. Risky investments, hidden debts, and shady deals were all putting their business at risk. Jack had always trusted Tom with the company's finances, believing that they shared the same vision. But now, it was clear that Tom's loyalty was a lie. The affair wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a direct threat to everything Jack had worked for. His company, his reputation, and his future were all at stake. But Jack wasn't going to let them take it from him. He had been blindsided, but now he was wide awake. With each new piece of evidence, Jack's resolve hardened. He wasn't just going to expose Sarah and Tom, he was going to make sure they paid for every deceitful act, down to the last dollar and broken promise. Jack continued to play the part of the clueless husband and trusting friend, smiling at the right moments, nodding along as Sarah and Tom lied to his face. But beneath his calm exterior, Jack was preparing for war. And when the time came, he would strike with precision, leaving no room for their excuses or apologies. This was no longer about hurt feelings, it was about reclaiming his life, his business, and his dignity. Jack knew that when the time was right, he would have all the cards in his hands. And he would make sure that Sarah and Tom understood the true meaning of betrayal. Jack had always been a man of strategy, whether in business or life. He knew that the key to winning was patience and planning. As he stared at the mounting evidence of Sarah and Tom's betrayal, he realized he couldn't just confront them with words, he needed to hit them where it hurt the most. Jack wasn't just going to expose their affair, he was going to reclaim everything they thought they could take from him. Jack's first move was to regain control of his company, starting with Tom's shares. He knew Tom was living well beyond his means, spending extravagantly on trips, luxury cars, and lavish gifts for Sarah. Tom's reckless spending habits had caught up with him, and he was secretly desperate for cash. Jack saw this as the perfect opportunity to strike. He began discreetly negotiating through a third party, posing as an anonymous buyer interested in Tom's shares. The offer was generous, too good for a cash-strapped Tom to refuse. With the help of his trusted lawyer and financial advisor, Jack orchestrated the transactions with surgical precision. Every document was carefully crafted, every transfer masked to keep Tom unaware of who was really behind the buyout. Tom, blinded by greed and unaware of Jack's involvement, eagerly sold his shares, believing he was offloading a portion of the company for a quick profit. Little did he know, he was handing over his last bit of leverage to the very man he had betrayed. Jack's legal team worked tirelessly, ensuring that the buyout went smoothly and without any suspicion. By the time Tom realized what had happened, it was too late. Jack was now the sole owner of the company. With Tom's influence stripped away, Jack moved swiftly to secure his position, making executive changes that left Tom powerless and irrelevant. All the while, Jack continued to play the part of the unsuspecting friend, attending meetings with Tom, shaking his hand, and even sharing drinks, all while silently relishing his quiet victory. But Jack wasn't just playing Tom, he was also playing Sarah. At home, he maintained the facade of the loving husband, going through the motions of their daily life. He still brought her flowers, asked about her day, and pretended not to notice when she slipped away to send secret texts to Tom. Every smile, every kind word was a calculated move, designed to keep her comfortable in her lies. Jack knew that Sarah and Tom were blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing, and he intended to keep it that way until the perfect moment. As the weeks went by, Jack tightened his grip on the company, making strategic changes that further marginalized Tom. He rewrote contracts, severed questionable business deals, and realigned the company's financials to reflect his newfound control. Jack was no longer just a co-founder, he was the sole captain of the ship, and he was steering it exactly where he wanted. Behind the scenes, Jack continued gathering evidence, now with an even sharper focus. He recorded Sarah's late-night phone calls and documented Tom's desperate attempts to cover up his financial missteps. Every new piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin he was building for them. Jack's plan was about more than just taking back control, it was about making sure that when he finally revealed the truth, Sarah and Tom would have no way out. Jack's mind was constantly calculating, always one step ahead. He was setting the stage for their downfall, meticulously planning the perfect moment when their worlds would come crashing down. To them, Jack was still the devoted husband and loyal friend. But in reality, he was the mastermind of their undoing, quietly pulling the strings that would lead to their ultimate humiliation. As Jack looked at his reflection in his office window, he felt no remorse. They had underestimated him, taken his kindness for weakness, and assumed he would never fight back. But Jack was done playing the victim. He had the upper hand now, and when the time was right, he would show them just how dangerous it was to betray the man who had given them everything. Jack knew that the perfect revenge needed the perfect setting. He decided to host a lavish dinner party at an upscale restaurant, a place where he and Sarah had celebrated many of their milestones. The guest list was carefully curated, inviting close friends, family, and key business associates. Among the attendees were Sarah's parents, who had always admired Jack for his success and kindness, and Tom, who, as usual, thought he was there to enjoy a night of luxury on Jack's dime. The evening began like any other elegant gathering. Champagne flowed, and laughter filled the room. Jack moved effortlessly through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, and keeping up his facade of the gracious host. Tom and Sarah were there, acting as though nothing was amiss, unaware that this would be a night they would never forget. As the dinner reached its peak, Jack tapped his glass, signaling for attention. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to him. Jack stood up, a warm smile on his face, and began his speech. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he started, his voice calm and steady. "I am truly grateful to have such wonderful friends, family, and colleagues who have supported me through every step of this incredible journey. Tonight, I wanted to celebrate that support, but I also need to share something deeply personal." Jack's tone shifted, growing more serious as he reached for a remote control in his pocket. With a click, the lights dimmed, and a large screen behind him flickered to life. At first, it displayed a photo of Jack, Sarah, and Tom, the three of them smiling together at a company event. "This is how I always saw us," Jack continued, his voice now tinged with the pain he had so carefully hidden. "But tonight, I need to show you the truth behind those smiles." The screen changed, revealing a series of incriminating photos and videos. First, there were images of Sarah and Tom meeting in secret, their stolen glances and intimate touches unmistakable. Then came the explicit text messages, projected large for all to see, detailing every sordid detail of their affair. Gasps echoed through the room, and whispers of disbelief filled the air. Tom's face turned pale, and Sarah's eyes widened in shock, her hands trembling as she clutched her wine glass. They were trapped, exposed in front of everyone they had deceived. Jack continued to narrate calmly, outlining the timeline of their betrayal, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. "As you can see, this isn't just about infidelity," Jack said, turning his gaze towards Tom. "This is about betrayal on every level, personal and professional." He clicked the remote again, and the screen shifted to financial records, showing how Tom had been secretly draining company funds and making reckless investments. "Tom, you not only betrayed our friendship, but you put our entire business at risk. But that ends tonight. Jack then produced documents showing the recent buyout, detailing how he had legally ousted Tom from the company. "I now own 100% of the business," Jack declared, his voice unwavering. "And Tom, effective immediately, you are no longer welcome in my company. Consider this your official notice of termination." Sarah, still in shock, tried to speak, but her voice faltered. Jack turned to her, his expression finally revealing the hurt she had caused. "And Sarah," he continued, holding up the stack of papers, "I've filed for divorce. I have all the evidence I need to ensure that you get nothing. You took my trust and shattered it, and now you get to live with the consequences." The room was silent except for the sound of Sarah's quiet sobs and Tom's stunned disbelief. Sarah's parents looked horrified, their faces etched with shame and anger. Her father, who had always been so proud of his daughter, stood up and addressed her in front of everyone. "How could you do this, Sarah?" "To him, to us," he said, his voice filled with disappointment. "You've shamed this family, and we want nothing more to do with you." Sarah's mother turned her back, unable to even look at her daughter. The public disowning was the final blow. Sarah had lost not only her husband but also the respect and support of her family. Tom, stripped of his dignity in his career, could only watch as everything he had schemed for fell apart in an instant. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of months of betrayal finally lift off his shoulders. He looked at the room, filled with people who now knew the full truth. "Thank you all for your support," Jack said, his voice strong. "Tonight was about reclaiming my life, my business, and my integrity. I'm moving forward, and I hope you all understand why this had to be done." With that, Jack walked away from the table, leaving Sarah and Tom to face the wreckage they had created. Jack was victorious, not just in business but in reclaiming his self-worth. He had exposed their lies, taken back control, and ensured that his future would never again be dictated by the deceit of others. As Jack walked out of the restaurant that night, he felt an overwhelming sense of relief. For months, he had been living in the shadows of Sarah and Tom's lies, suffocated by betrayal. But now, the weight had been lifted. He had done what he set out to do. He had taken back control of his life, his business, and his dignity. The people who had deceived him were now exposed for what they truly were, and Jack stood victorious. The days following the big reveal were a whirlwind of legal meetings, media buzz, and whispers within their social circle. Jack, however, handled it all with the same composure and determination that had guided him through his darkest moments. He finalized the buyout, solidifying his position as the sole owner of the company. Every decision he made now was his and his alone. No more secret deals, no more stolen profits. The business he had built from the ground up was once again in safe hands, his hands. Tom, on the other hand, was left in ruins. News of his reckless financial decisions spread quickly, tarnishing his reputation in the industry. No company wanted to associate with a man known for backstabbing his own partner. Tom was jobless, disgraced, and completely cut off from the world he once thrived in. His desperate attempts to reach out to Jack were met with silence. Jack had already moved on, leaving Tom to deal with the consequences of his actions. Sarah's downfall was equally harsh. She found herself ostracized, not only by her social circle but also by her own family. Friends who once admired her charm now turned their backs, unwilling to associate with someone who had betrayed a man like Jack. Her parents, humiliated by her actions, refused to support her. Sarah was left alone, shunned, and with no one to blame but herself. Meanwhile, Jack focused on rebuilding his life. He poured his energy into the company, driving it to new heights with fresh ideas and a renewed sense of purpose. But beyond business, Jack found strength in reclaiming his personal happiness. He took time to travel, reconnect with old friends, and explore passions he had long set aside. For the first time in years, Jack was living for himself, free from the shadows of deceit that had once loomed over him. Sitting in his office one evening, Jack reflected on his journey. He thought about the heartbreak he had endured, the anger that had fueled him, and the strategy that had ultimately led him to victory. It hadn't been easy. There were nights filled with doubt and moments when he questioned if he could go through with his plan. But every challenge had shaped him, turning his pain into power. Jack realized that while he had lost people he once loved, he had gained something far more valuable: self-respect. He had proven to himself that he was stronger than any betrayal, smarter than any deceit, and more resilient than he had ever imagined. He no longer saw himself as the victim of Sarah and Tom's actions. He was the architect of his own destiny, and he had rewritten his story on his terms. As he looked out over the city skyline, Jack made a silent vow. He would never again allow anyone to take advantage of his kindness or betray his trust. He had learned the hard way that not everyone deserved a place in his life, and he would guard his heart with the same vigilance that he now applied to his business. But Jack also knew that this experience had not made him bitter. It had made him wiser, sharper, and more determined to embrace whatever the future held. Jack smiled to himself, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time. He was no longer defined by the betrayals that had once consumed him. Instead, he was defined by his ability to rise above them, to turn pain into power and adversity into triumph. His journey had been one of heartbreak, revenge, and redemption, but most of all, it had been a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Looking forward with renewed confidence, Jack knew that the best was yet to come. He had reclaimed his life, and nothing, and no one, would ever break him again. And so ends Jack's story, a man who turned betrayal and despair into personal and professional victory. A journey of overcoming that shows that no matter how tough the road may be, it's possible to bounce back and come out stronger than ever. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of revenge, betrayal, and triumph, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel Only Stories About Men. Here, we share real stories of men who have overcome challenges and shown that the best revenge is moving forward with your head held high. There are many more stories like this waiting for you. So, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates and share this with those who need to hear these stories of resilience and victory. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.